The scripture, if you would like to follow along, can be found in the third panel of your worship bulletin. It comes to us from the Gospel of Matthew, the 11th chapter, verses 1 through 19. It's a long pericope. The lectionary has been following John the Baptist, which many folks might think is a little out of sorts because we want to get on with Christmas. But Advent is a time of anticipation and waiting and preparing for the coming of Christmas and, of course, the birth of the Christ child. So John the Baptist is the precursor for that. He is the one proclaiming it. And putting this into context, if you recall what I said last week as we read the text about him, the Jewish people of this time believed that God had not spoken for 400 years. From the time of the writing of the book of Malachi until this moment, and those who followed Jesus, they believed God had been silent and not spoken. Then if you want to know more about that, I guess you can go back and visit that message on our website. But this is a big deal. John says, a voice crying in the wilderness. It's like an explosion. It's like a horn, a trumpet blowing. Wake up. It's time to listen. Again, God is ready to speak. Now it occurs, John was preaching somewhere, probably in what is today the other side of the Dead Sea, Jordan, the country of Jordan. And we know that that is the area, probably most accurately, where Jesus himself was baptized. And John hung out with a lot of the religious extremists or fanatics or discouraged people at that time in that area. And we can tie geographically that to this story because it says that John is arrested. And that's the place where he was held until he was beheaded by Herod in the palace that Herod had at this particular place. Now, the sermon title would probably be more appropriately stated as Great Expectations, very similar to the book with the same title by Charles Dickens. But really, when you look at this text, that's what it is about, expectations. What is it you expect? What is it the world expects? And what are the problems that come from not understanding, defining what it is that we have as expectations? It's a very important thing to think about in our day and age, especially at this Advent season. What is it, really, that we're expecting? Guillermo's going to read this text now, which comes to us from a contemporary version, the Message.
It is printed in the bulletin if you want to follow along. Jesus went to teach and preach in nearby villages. John, meanwhile, had been locked up in prison. When he got wind of what Jesus was doing, he sent his own disciples to ask, "Are you the one we've been expecting, or are we still waiting?" Jesus told them, "Go back and tell John what's going on. The blind see, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised. The wretched of the earth learn that God is on their side. Is this what you were expecting? Then count yourselves blessed." When John's disciples left to report, Jesus started talking to the crowd about John. "What did you expect when you went out to see him in the wild? A weekend camper? Hardly. What then, a sheik in silk pajamas? Not in the wilderness, not by a long shot. What then, a prophet? That's right, a prophet. Probably the best prophet you'll ever hear. He is the prophet that Malachi announced when he wrote, 'I'm sending my prophet ahead of you to make the road smooth for you.' Let me tell you what's going on here. No one in history surpasses John the Baptizer. But in the kingdom he prepared you for, the lowliest person is ahead of him. For a long time now, people have tried to force themselves into God's kingdom. But if you read the book of the prophets and God's law closely, you will see them culminate in John, teaming up with him and preparing the way for the Messiah of the kingdom. Look at it this way. John is the Elijah you've all been expecting to arrive and introduce the Messiah. Are you listening to me? Really listening? How can I account for this generation? The people have been like spoiled children whining to their parents. We wanted to skip rope and you were always too tired. We wanted to talk, but you were always too busy. John came fasting, and they called him crazy. I came feasting, and they called me a boozer, a friend of the misfits. Opinion polls don't count for much, do they? The proof of the pudding is in the eating. Here ends this reading. We ask for God's blessings upon it.